Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and today I'm talking about the first line. Yes, Marvel's Lost Generation. And this is a mini-series, a 12-part mini-series that was done by John Byrne, Roger Stern, and Al Milgrom, right? So basically, when this thing first came out, I read about it in Comic Shop News right here, this blurb. What once was lost is now found, and let's see if we can do this. I'm gonna try to give you this. Got my glasses on. Let's see what it says. When the idea of Marvel Time was first introduced some 20 years or more ago, something called the 7-year rule was in place. It had been 7 years since the Fantastic Four went up in their rocket, and it would always be 7 years. People who came to Marvel later, and fans who learned the rule misunderstood the concept and saw it as some kind of sliding scale. If it was 7 years then, it must be 10 years by now. And a great deal of confusion was set in, especially when there was one or two more people who wanted the whole thing to happen in real time. However, whether or not the FF went up in 7 years or 10 years, it became increasingly obvious that the gulf of time between their first flight and the last appearance of Captain America had grown from a half a dozen years. It was when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby crafted the Fantastic Four in issue 1 to something closer to a half a century. This raised the question, what was going on in that chunk of time? When it was only 5-6 years, it was easy enough to think there might have been a pause in the spontaneous generation of super folks. So 40 years, 50 years, so I suggested a series that would fill that gap with an elastic time that would stretch itself to accommodate the movement of Marvel time, right? So there you go. That's the idea of how this series would work. That it would be an elastic timeline that would kind of start with definite times and have definite demarcations. But as it goes along, you wouldn't know what would happen, right? So for now, there's a lot of issues. We're going to have to go from the beginning, right? But I'm going to do the first 3 and see where we get, right? We're going to try that because this is a very involved series, right? And so I got through all of the main stuff in this series. I'm going to now just give you my overview. Now, when I was about 9 or 10, I would buy X-Men back issues. And yes, I'm going to do this. I'd go in and I found X-Men 132 and I was like wowed. I found the reprints issues of the X-Men like 70 something. I didn't know. I realized when I bought it was a reprint, but I never read the issue with the Juggernaut, and it had the full story in the book. So I was just like wowed with it. So it was one of those things where this book, or I bring that up, I almost lost my train of thought, was as it went along, it was the equivalent of buying back issues, right? Because at this point, as a comic buyer, I'm going for the talent or the character, right? So in this case, I'm initially going for the talent and hoping there'll be something character-wise for me to latch on to, right? So when the first issue comes, I guess we should just start here. Let's start with the first issue. We're going to be introduced to a lot of characters. And as it goes along, I'm going to latch on to some characters. If the book is going well and done right, I'm going to start latching on to characters, same like the X-Men, right? Because I didn't know who Wolverine was. I knew the original X-Men, and I started to latch on to Wolverine because he reminded me of Batman in the face, not in the character. And at the same time, I'd fall for Storm. My name was Peter, so, I connected with Colossus, that sort of thing. And, ultimately I did like Nightcrawler. But it's like one of those things, as you go along, you start to connect with the characters when they get a little more spotlight. And that same thing happens in the series, right? So in the last bit, since I'm at the 5-minute mark, Roger Stern said, instead of doing it 1 through 12, he would have done 500, 546, 329, had the numbers be all wild numbers as they went back and forth in time. So it would be like, actually like, I don't know how that would work marketing wise, but I think that would be the equivalent of a series like this, right? So it starts, and this is at the end of the Lost Generation, the last not really documented point in Marvel history. This is an undocumented period where we actually see the end of this generation, right? That's what the Watcher is saying, right? And then I had, while I'm here, you see that, and then here, hopefully you can see it on my phone. You can see the pencil version of this, and it's really nice, right? And they have the pencils of the next page, which introduce all the characters. So, right, we have Cassandra here, and the Watcher detects the temporal disappearance. That's her. That is Cassandra. She's going back in time, and she is going to find out what's been hidden from the Earth for all these years. That there was a great war between the first line and the Skrulls. The Skrulls planned on invading the Earth, and the first line was trying to stop them. This is where it feels like we're going to lose all this capital. We don't know what happened to these guys, right? I don't know if I can name all of these. Who can I give you as we go along, right? I know there's Nocturne, the Walkabout. Who else is here? I think there's Flatiron, Oxbow, and Pixie. Mr. Justice, I think that's Ryodak. There's Yeti, who's an Inhuman. There's Gladfly. Not sure who that is. This is, I think, Knight and Squire. The Black Fox. And Mako. At this point, she would become my favorite character. And Nightingale, right? That's as much as I can give you, right? That's as much as I can remember right offhand. Right? And she wants the Watcher to try to stop it, but he can't interfere. But he can interfere. But then he says he hasn't interfered. At this point, the Watcher hasn't interfered with anything. Right? And then we see a female Skrull. And we introduced. I did like Yeti also. Yeti's pretty cool, and he pops up, and he hurts Cassandra, but Skrull is dead. And we meet Nightingale. Nightingale that was a character that I kind of liked, but we lost her so quick. I was like, oh Lord. Is this how it's going to happen? They're literally going to be like the cover we seen? That we lose all these guys, right? And that's when we introduced to Mako, right? So Mako's there. She's making short work of the Skrulls. And this gets to, if you know Byrne's early work, the faces were pretty flat, and sometimes Byrne goes to that in some of the characters he's creating, kind of go back to that sort of thing, and it causes a cool effect. Sort of similar to how Marv is in Sin City, right? So we had Knight and Squire. They're against killing, right? And then, of course, we see Knight die. We push a Squire to the limit. And then that even affects Mako, who seems to be all out for killing. Mako does something, but then she gets shuttled out into space, right? And Pixie, we see her. He said we're losing. She's able to use her. Pixie doesn't turn them into stone. We're at the same time We see Oxbow. His arrow breaks through doors. And we see the Black Fox. This is where we're introduced to the Black Fox, who's seemingly a Batman character, laying aside that they were having fun with him and he wasn't up to snuff to take on these guys. Another ad, I think you've seen it before, right? Then we have Gladfight. When she popped up, I was like, wow, this is a nice looking character. But we lose her really quick. Then Walkabout was trying to figure this character out. Then inside of him is like, wow, this is one of the rougher, at this point, this is one of the rougher Skrull stories outside of, I think, Skull Kill Crew, where they were killing, they're going at people killing Skrulls. We're introduced to Nocturne, right? Who does something to Professor Carmody, who will learn who he is later. If you know your Silver Age or Golden Age characters, you might know who it is. And we meet Mr. Justice, and he says, "You have the Clipper's belt on." And he gets killed. It's not working out. See Riot at Flatiron. Everybody's going, but then we got Effigy, and he has one last-ditch effort to blow the ship. Right? We have to make sure that the Skrulls don't make it, and they say, tell them traitor, right? Recreant. And then we see Effigy turn back to a Skrull. And then he says, the bad guy. And she's like, wait a second, he's a Skrull. Right? And she says, no, don't do that. He says, he has no choice. We see the Skull Armada destroyed. And then this later would lead to, it wouldn't lead to it, but we see all of the other people that were coming up soon. And I think I'm not sure, I got to look. I'm not sure if his looks into the future and past and alternate universe was used in screens. But I don't know that anyone write me in and say that they were done. But then we introduced to Doctor Strange as he was practicing. So I think something in Steve Englehart's run said that Doctor Strange has been around for a very long time. So that's where they kind of inverted it in the movie, that the Ancient One was cheating time, right? So we got through the first issue, right? Fun. We lost everybody. So as I always sometimes think about it, like, well, why would I stay with this? We lost some characters I like. We're going back in time. Maybe we'll meet some of them as we go, right? And we see Mr. Justice here, right? We got Walkabout, and then we have Pixie. This guy who we have no idea who he is, right? So bang, this is where I was like, this is my new favorite character. Walkabout, right? So here's Walkabout, and we know that has a, we kind of know he has this inside of him, right? And here Dr. Carmody is talking to the robot. It's a robot and a man and some sort of being in there, some sort of humanoid being, right? And John Byrne and Roger Stern were co-plotting the book, and Roger Stern scripted it, right? So we have this virus that's spreading on the thing, but at the same time, there's a ship that falls down. So there's two stories going on in this thing, right? So they see this ship, and this guy finds this sort of screen. They talk about alien invasion, right? So he goes in there. This cut back to the regular story. Walkabout goes in, sees all these people in these sort of containers. At the same time, Firefall, that's who that character is, right? And then we're introduced, they go to Chicago. Dr. Robert Payne, right? And she's watching something while she's in there. and she's watching something about the first line, and she's into them, and he's so it's kind of, this is hinting, they don't tell you who this is, but you realize that this is the Black Fox, right? And this guy who went on a spaceship, he runs into this guy. He's bringing this thing about the Skrulls. Now, the Skrulls are going to be some part of this story as the story keeps going. They're always going to be a part of it, right? So this guy is talking about this alien invasion, right? And gives the information on that to infiltrate Earth society. Did you hear that? Gets kicked out on the street. No one wants to believe it. Now, we know this is real, but no one else is believing this nonsense, right? So while this is happening, that whatever the virus is trying to take down Walkabout, and he frees Firefly, frees the rest of them. You find out it's Nocturne, right? We run into Mr. Justice again. So now he goes to the police, shows them the proof, not the Punisher, gets kicked out of the precinct, right? So they're almost being taken down, but at the same time, oh wow. So Pixie's able to use her dust, and she's able to take out this stuff, right? So this dude, when getting turned down by everyone, runs into the Thing. Oh, sorry, Ben Grimm, as a college student. And he says, hey, might as well go see my friend up here. He'll be able to know what to do with it. And the guy comes in there, shows him the video, and he knows exactly what to do. Reed Richards knows exactly how to handle this. All right? So Nocturne has been frozen and turned into stone. He tries to take the mask off for some reason, and they put him into a container, what's left of him, right? And this actually, the building that they messed up was the Baxter building, right? So back in college, the thing was, when he was playing this, it was something he understood and no one else could. So unconsciously, he was understanding the other language, and he was actually he actually had amnesia, and he took to his human memories. And here we have the headquarters of the First Line right here, right? And they captured a Skrull. He's a shapeshifter like Effigy, distant cousin, right? So he thinks there's always two of them, and the second one finds Yeti, right? So this is how to connect these two connected, but we don't get to see. So the whole point was there's a ton of story in between here, right? Well, why Yeti left the team, right? But she was this one's partner, and he was injured in the flight, right? So now we got one more. You know, I like keeping these things at 25 minutes. And this is who Walkabout is, right? So we saw the insides. Now we have a Walkabout Professor Carmidy's story, right? And we already saw Coast of Maine, where they have the headquarters. Now you see, when you go back in time, it's not as developed as it was before, right? So you have someone trying to sneak in their headquarters, or someone's headquarters, right? and realizes it's Nick Fury, right? And we see an early stages walkabout, right? And in there, at the same time, we have Effigy, right? So they got Nick Fury, got Effigy, and then he shows he was once the Secretary of State. Then at the same time, while they're doing their thing, the deviants are coming, right? And they're going to attack. And you see some weird color stuff in here, like this outline of white around here. Those are the color separators. I think they were just trying to do this line here, but they somehow got all this. So Glynis Oliver doing color, but the color separators, the ones that had like the airbrush and all that nutty stuff, they kind of went overboard in this series. So they kind of ruined anything that Glynis Oliver was doing, right? So the deviants are attacking, and we finally see Cassandra again, right? And they're taking on these deviants. We see her now; she's a little wary. We have look at that's another great shot of Yeti, right? And then we see Effigy, but she knows Effigy is a Skrull. So much stuff is going on in here in her head. All this is going on. They're slowly catching the. We find the girl who was in there. She, back in this sort of period of free love, possibly. She's a fan of the what's the name? The Black Fox, right? And they're trying to talk her out of it. She leaps away. They don't realize that they didn't know that she was a mutant. And they both clearly have some sort of powers. And I don't think it's going to be revealed, so I can't say too much more about this. See, there's that white line again, right? So that's a color separator issue. He hints that he has powers, then something's happening to her. She obviously is a child of this, so she's possibly a mutant, and she starts to change, right? And then we see, as all this stuff is going on, he said they need fusion, right? So she sees the moment where Professor Carmody, who's this homunculus, goes into walkabout, right? Making short work. He's trying to figure out why they're chasing after her. She doesn't want to say, but then this leads to a possibly big fight. And Yeti goes out of control. He's just killing these guys. Then Rapunzel is able to calm down Yeti and then take out the rest of the guys. Right? The rest of the deviants break out. But then Oxbow makes a metal net. And then he kills the rest of the deviants. Alright. Chris Claremont returned to the X-Men. It wasn't for long. Sorry. Right? And he, what's the name? Professor Kamadi has telepathy, right? And he talks about the Skrulls to see how Effigy's going to react, right? So here, he's upset about the Skrulls, but she's trying to figure out if she can trust them. So she breaks out again, right? And there's a hint that Nick Fury is going to become part of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? And then she mentioned the Yankee Clipper, right? So, and there we go. This is where I'm going to end it, right? Almost 30 minutes. We get introduced to the first line of some of their members. Ultimately, I think they might have worked out better if it was known as the first line. But is there any other tidbits I can give you? He said everybody dies in our first issue, but we have to find out why. All right. In this article, they talk about this series, but it also talks about, his other time travel stories or looks into the past, right? So he said, I known what was coming, I wouldn't have eliminated Superboy. Talks about the next one being the time travel story and some Superman stuff. So yeah, there we go, the first 3 issues. I will definitely be back and do more for you guys if you're liking them. Well, I'm doing them anyway, right? This, I guess I should end it here. This is like, it's not exactly like The Watchmen, but it has a tone like this. But even though, and not to say that, because Watchmen has some bits that are reminiscent of the first 12 issues of the Alpha Flight. So it's not like they're not in the same wheelhouse. But this is going in reverse. So we're going to find out. I think he did it something like this similar for the last Superman Batman generation. So that's it. I don't think I have anything else to say about this. Told you about Marvel Time. Thinking this thing. Oh yeah, I still got a little time. He said, Byrne and same thing. The negative reaction from some of the precincts of fandom was instant and loud, and as I noted, based entirely on not having read a word of the book. Not a scrap of Marvel continuity was damaged by a lost generation, and indeed some elements were even underlined and reinforced. The loudest complainers were those who insisted irrationally there was no such thing as Marvel time, that everything happened in real time since we met the FF back in 1961. Most of the vitriol was directed at me as the great destroyer, and there was assumptions on the parts of fans that they knew the Marvel universe better than Roger and myself, only to reveal their complaints the reverse. At the end, the series did well in sales, and I was discussing a spinoff with Ralph Macchio, the editor of Lost Generation, when the regime changed and the Hidden Years was canceled and I left Marvel. Spinner Rack out.